Hi everyone, it's Miss Jan from the Woodlands Children's Museum. Welcome to Shadow Puppet Theater. Shadow puppetry is an ancient art form that goes back over 2,000 years, and we love having shadow puppet theater at the museum. It's a way of telling a story that's very different from me just reading it to you. So we picked a story today called The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. And I think it's perfect for this time of year. I know a lot of you are probably helping mom and dad or grandma and grandpa in your gardens, in your yards, or even if you don't have a big yard, you might have some big flower pots with pretty flowers. So this story is about one little boy who brings a city to life with beautiful gardens. So sit back. Before I start reading, please say hi to Mr. Ron, our cameraman and puppeteer. So, enjoy The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. There once was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days, while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. Oh, it's fun splashing in puddles, isn't it? It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs. He pushed open the door and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last things he had expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems. Pruning is when you cut back the dead parts of the plant so they'll grow better. But do you know what? The plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season. And for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken a toll on the garden. But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. Can you tell what that is? That's an old car that somebody just left out there, and the flowers like growing in it. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. The end. And I just want to show you some of the pictures. I know this is Shadow Puppet Theater, but I just think you need to see some of the colors of the garden that Liam planted. The flowers. It's called the Curious Garden because the garden was curious about the whole city, so it just kept spreading and growing. There's even some plants that Liam made to look like animals. Can you tell there's an elephant there, a giraffe, and I think that's a moose. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of the illustrations in that story besides the shadow puppets. So I hope you enjoyed our story today. Enjoy the gardens and all the beautiful flowers and the vegetables that are out there right now. So in the meantime, until we see you guys again, I want you to keep a smile on your face and a story and a song in your heart. Bye-bye, everyone.